Giorgio Armani is one of the biggest names in fashion. His brand is seen on red carpets, in luxury hotels, and in high-end stores around the world. He's built a business worth billions and changed the way people see power and style. But behind all the success is a shocking story most people don't know. Armani was not born into fashion. He fought his way into it. The real story is far from polished. How did a boy from Piacenza, Italy, with no clear path ahead, rise to tear down old rules and die mourned by millions? The roots of a survivor. Giorgio Armani was born in 1934 in Piacenza, a modest town in northern Italy. His father worked in transport. His mother kept the home, and together they scraped by on little. Life was already lean, but soon it became brutal. Armani's childhood unfolded under the shadow of World War II, a time when every day carried the possibility of hunger, fear, and death. As a boy, Armani heard the wail of sirens and the thunder of Allied bombs raining down on northern Italian towns. Nights were spent huddled in cellars or makeshift shelters, listening to buildings crumble and neighbors cry out. He learned early that safety was never guaranteed. Food was also so scarce that his family survived on rations, bread stretched thin, watered-down soup, potatoes when they could be found. Hunger gnawed constantly, and Armani saw his parents quietly go without so the children could eat. Poverty wasn't just numbers in a bank account. It was cold winters with thin coats, worn-out shoes, and the humiliation of lining up for meager portions. Post-war Italy offered no relief, only new kinds of struggle. The streets of Piacenza were filled with rubble, soldiers limping home broken, and families trying to stitch their lives together. The wealthy kept their dignity, while families like the Armanis lived on scraps and hope. Armani became sharply aware of the gulf between classes. Even in hardship, he noticed how some clung to appearances, polishing shoes, pressing worn clothes as if order in their dress could fight back against chaos. At home, Armani's mother became his first teacher in survival. She patched old garments, made coats last another winter, and taught her children that being clean and presentable mattered. Armani watched her hands move over fabric with precision, turning scarcity into dignity. He understood, even then, that clothes were not just protection from the elements, they were armor for the spirit. These years carved survival into Armani's bones. War, hunger, and poverty could have broken him, but instead, they gave him discipline, resilience, and an eye for the quiet power of simplicity. Out of the ruins of Piacenza, the boy who had seen bombs fall and meals vanish would one day rise to redefine the very idea of elegance. The accidental turn. Giorgio Armani's path to fashion was anything but planned. As a young man, he enrolled at the University of Milan to study medicine. For 3 years, he pursued a future in healthcare, but the lectures and training left him unfulfilled. He realized that medicine was not where his talents or passions lay. Dropping out was a difficult decision, but it marked the first of several unexpected turns that would redirect his life. Soon after, Armani was drafted into the Italian army. He served at the Verona Military Hospital, where his responsibilities exposed him to the structured environment of military life. The strict discipline of the barracks, the precise schedules, and the sight of soldiers in uniform left a lasting impression on him. Uniforms represented more than clothing. They projected order, identity, and authority. Armani absorbed these lessons subconsciously, even though he had no idea that fashion would become his future. When his military service ended, Armani faced the pressing question of what to do next. With limited options, he sought work in Milan, a city that was becoming the heart of Italy's post-war cultural and economic revival. He found employment at La Rinascente, one of the most prestigious department stores in the country. Initially, this was not a glamorous job. He began as a window dresser, responsible for arranging displays that would attract customers. Yet this position became a turning point. At La Rinascente, Armani was surrounded by fabrics, garments, and the art of presentation. He learned how colors influenced mood, how textures drew attention, and how clothing could be arranged to tell a story. He observed customer reactions, studied what drew them in, and gained first-hand experience of how fashion operated as both commerce and communication. This was practical training, more valuable than any classroom. The timing was also significant. In the 1950s and 1960s, Milan was rising as a fashion capital, challenging Paris and gaining international recognition. Italian designers and retailers were setting new standards of style, and Armani happened to be in the middle of this cultural shift. Although he had only stumbled into this environment, his adaptability allowed him to learn quickly and thrive. What began as an accidental job soon became an education in the psychology of fashion. Armani had moved from medicine to the military and finally to store windows. Each stage equipped him with lessons that, combined, prepared him for the career he never planned but was destined to pursue. Apprenticeship under masters. In the 1960s, Giorgio Armani took a decisive step forward in his career when he joined Nino Cerruti's Hitman label. Cerruti came from a family with a deep heritage in textile production, and his company was one of the most respected in the Italian menswear industry. Armani was hired to design for the menswear division, a role that placed him in direct contact with fine fabrics, expert tailors, and the traditions of Italian craftsmanship. At Cerruti, Armani was introduced to a world of luxury materials. Wool, cashmere, and silk were no longer distant items seen in shop windows. He handled them daily, learning how texture, weight, and cut could transform a garment. The experience required precision. Every seam, every stitch, and every fold mattered. Armani developed a deep respect for the process behind the creation of garments, understanding that clothing was not only about visual appeal, but also about balance, proportion, and movement. The Italian tailoring scene was at the height of its influence during this period. Milan, Rome, and Florence were redefining men's fashion, offering an alternative to the rigid formality of traditional English suits. Italian designers emphasized elegance without stiffness, and this philosophy strongly influenced Armani's own thinking. He began to experiment with softening the traditional jacket, removing excess padding from shoulders, and creating pieces that allowed the body to move more naturally. This subtle departure would later become one of his trademarks. Armani also drew inspiration from beyond tailoring. He was fascinated by architecture and minimalism, disciplines that valued clean lines, functional design, and uncluttered form. He applied these ideas to fashion, translating architectural clarity into garments that emphasized structure without excess. His use of neutral palettes further distinguished his work, setting it apart from the more flamboyant styles that dominated the decade. This period of apprenticeship was critical. Armani did not chase fleeting trends. Instead, he built his foundation on discipline, mastery of materials, and a clear philosophy of design. Working under Cerruti gave him the technical expertise and confidence to innovate. It was here that Armani sharpened the skills that would later allow him to strip fashion down to essentials and reshape both menswear and women's wear with timeless precision. The birth of the Armani vision. By the early 1970s, Giorgio Armani was ready to step away from working under established names. He had absorbed the discipline of tailoring, but wanted to define fashion on his own terms. In 1970, he left Cerruti and began freelancing for several major houses, including Zegna and Ungaro. This period gave him room to experiment, test ideas, and refine a personal style without the constraints of corporate direction. His designs carried a distinct identity that caught the attention of industry insiders who sensed that Armani had a vision that was different from the rest. The decisive turning point came when he met Sergio Galeotti, an architect who became both his partner in business and his closest collaborator. Galeotti recognized Armani's potential and encouraged him to take the leap into independence. With Galeotti's financial and strategic support, Armani was able to move from freelancing to building his own company. The partnership balanced Armani's creative discipline with Galeotti's business acumen, creating the foundation for a brand that would soon stand apart in the global fashion scene. In 1975, Armani and Galeotti officially founded Giorgio Armani S.p.A. The debut collection was revolutionary. The response was immediate. Armani's unstructured tailoring was unlike anything else at the time. While other designers embraced bold colors, extravagant cuts, and lavish displays, Armani introduced an alternative that valued subtlety and functionality. The fashion climate of the 1970s made this contrast even more striking. The decade was dominated by flamboyant style, with figures like Versace and Yves Saint Laurent setting the pace with bold glamour. Armani rejected excess and instead appealed to a growing audience that sought practicality and quiet sophistication. His designs gave professionals clothing that looked refined but never overbearing, clothing that fit seamlessly into modern life. Armani's first collection signaled more than a personal achievement. It marked the birth of a vision that would reshape the industry. By breaking free from established paths and creating his own identity, Armani positioned himself as the designer who proved that elegance could come from restraint. This was the beginning of a philosophy that would define his empire. The Hollywood breakthrough. In 1980, Giorgio Armani achieved a breakthrough that propelled him beyond Europe and into the global spotlight. That year, his designs were featured in the film American Gigolo, starring Richard Gere. Armani was chosen to design the wardrobe for Gere's character, and the sleek, tailored suits on screen captured the attention of audiences worldwide. For many in the United States, it was their first introduction to Armani's work, and the impact was immediate. The film elevated Armani's reputation almost overnight. Gary's character embodied a confident, modern masculinity, and the suits became as memorable as the performance itself. American men, eager to replicate the same sense of authority and sophistication, began demanding Armani suits. This moment marked the beginning of the power suit craze in the United States, where Armani's clean lines and understated elegance became symbols of success and ambition in the corporate world. Armani's influence quickly extended beyond menswear. Recognizing the changing roles of women in society, he expanded into designing sharp, structured suits for women. These pieces aligned perfectly with the feminist movement of the 1980s, which saw more women entering the professional workforce and seeking clothing that projected confidence and independence. Armani's women's suits were not only fashionable but also cultural statements, empowering women to occupy spaces that had long been dominated by men. Hollywood became one of Armani's greatest platforms. After American Gigolo, his designs appeared regularly on red carpets, worn by some of the biggest stars of the era. Celebrities embraced Armani because his work balanced glamour with sophistication, avoiding excess while still delivering undeniable impact. This visibility established him as the designer of stars, a reputation that reinforced his global appeal. The historical consequence of this breakthrough was profound. Armani was no longer only an Italian designer. He became the global face of Italian fashion, representing craftsmanship, refinement, and modern style to audiences across continents. His partnership with Hollywood demonstrated the power of cinema and celebrity in shaping fashion trends. Armani's aesthetic bridged Europe and America, merging Italian tradition with American cultural influence, and cemented his place as one of the defining designers of the 20th century. Diversification and business genius. By the 1980s, Giorgio Armani had established himself as a leading designer, but he was determined to go further. Rather than remain limited to high-end collections, he built a brand structure that would reach different markets without losing prestige. His expansion began with Emporio Armani, a line that provided quality designs at a more accessible price, aimed at younger professionals. Armani Exchange followed, targeted at an even broader audience, especially in the United States. Alongside these, he launched Armani Jeans, which brought his design philosophy into casual wear. This multi-tiered approach allowed Armani to capture diverse customer bases, while maintaining Giorgio Armani, his luxury label, at the top. His ambitions extended beyond clothing. In the 1990s, Armani moved into lifestyle branding with Armani Casa, offering furniture and home decor that reflected his signature minimalism. Later, he introduced Armani Hotels and Resorts, blending fashion with hospitality and expanding the brand into luxury experiences. These moves positioned Armani not just as a fashion designer, but as the head of a global lifestyle empire. What distinguished Armani's strategy was his control. Unlike many rivals who relied heavily on licensing and lost oversight of their products, Armani was careful to monitor quality and consistency. He allowed licensing in select categories, but ensured that the brand identity remained intact. This discipline prevented the overexposure that damaged many fashion houses during the same period. The results were clear. While other brands faltered under rapid diversification, Armani's empire remained steady. His expansion was methodical, guided by the same restraint that defined his designs. Each new venture was built on a foundation of discipline and clear vision. Financially, Armani's careful growth made him one of the wealthiest fashion designers in the world. His net worth rose steadily, proving that his success was not only artistic, but also entrepreneurial. Armani invested in himself, his ideas, and his independence, creating a business model that combined creativity with long-term stability and turning himself into a legend among legends, one that would be loved and remembered long after the end. The poor boy who built an empire and protected it until the end. In the final decade of his life, Giorgio Armani remained one of the last independent giants in the luxury world. He stayed in full control of his empire, determined to protect the values he had spent a lifetime building: simplicity, discipline, and elegance without excess. Between 2014 and 2025, Armani focused on expanding his brand without compromising its identity. He invested heavily in flagship stores in key cities like Milan, New York, Paris, and Hong Kong. ensuring his retail spaces reflected the same sharp aesthetic as his clothing. He also adapted to the digital era, expanding his e-commerce operations and launching exclusive online collections, especially during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. Armani continued to lead in multiple markets at once. His Armani beauty line, developed with L'Oreal, became a global powerhouse. Fragrances like Acqua di Gio and C topped international sales charts, while new skincare and makeup lines kept the brand relevant with younger generations. In 2016, he established the Giorgio Armani Foundation, designed to protect the company's future and prevent it from falling into outside hands. He made it clear there would be no public listing and no rushed sale. The foundation's charter requires any major structural change like selling shares or merging to wait at least 5 years after his death. Succession was planned carefully. With no children, Armani passed leadership responsibilities to a group of trusted people. These included his longtime menswear director Leo Dell'Orco, his nieces Silvana and Roberta Armani, his nephew Andrea Camarana, and senior executives like Giuseppe Marsocci. All had worked beside him for years, understanding not just the business, but the mindset behind it. On September 4th, 2025, Giorgio Armani passed away at the age of 91 in Milan. The cities of Milan and Piacenza declared days of mourning in his honor, reflecting the deep respect he commanded across Italy. Thousands visited his casket at Armani/Teatro, the theater he built to stage his fashion shows. A private funeral followed, attended by world leaders, celebrities, designers, and the people who helped him build his vision. At the time of his death, the Armani Group was valued at over 2.3 billion euros, standing as one of the world's most stable, privately owned luxury empires. What remains is not just a brand, but a lasting institution, one of the world's most stable, privately owned luxury groups. Armani's true investment was not in trend or noise, but in structure, control, and quiet power. And that, more than any logo or product, is what will carry his name forward. What do you think about the Armani empire? Do you agree with his fashion choices? Tell us in the comments below. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.